Commander Helena Brooks walked slowly through the dark hallways of Kepler Station. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. The lights were dim to save power. Behind her, Lieutenant Kyle Martinez carried a data pad that showed their daily reports. The news was always bad these days. "How many people left the station this week?" Helena asked without turning around. 47 more families took the last transport to the inner colonies, Kyle said. His voice was tired. "That brings our total population down to 2,147 people. Helena stopped walking and closed her eyes. When Kepler Station was built 100 years ago, it housed 50,000 people. Now they had less than 3,000 left. Most were old soldiers like her who refused to abandon their post. The rest were engineers who kept the station running, and a few families too stubborn or too poor to leave. They walked past a window that showed the space around their station. Helena could see the enemy ships floating in the darkness like metal sharks. The Zilithian Collective had been out there for exactly 100 years. Their huge warships formed a perfect circle around Kepler Station. They were patient. They could wait forever. "Any word from command?" Helena asked as they entered the main control room. "Nothing new," Kyle said. "The last message was 6 months ago. They said help was coming, but we both know that means nothing." Helena sat down in her command chair. The control room had 50 stations when the siege began. Now only 12 people worked there during the day shift. Half the computers were shut down to save power. The air smelled stale because the recycling systems were breaking down. She looked at the main screen that showed their defensive status. The shield generators were running at 30% power. The weapons had enough energy for maybe 6 hours of fighting. Food supplies would last another 8 months if they cut rations again. The medical bay had run out of most medicines 2 years ago. "Commander," called out Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communication station. "I'm getting a signal on the emergency channel." Helena sat up straight. No one had used the emergency channel in 15 years. "Put it on the main screen." Crackling voice filled the control room. "Kepler Station, this is Transport Ship New Boston requesting permission to dock. We are carrying Terran Military Academy cadets on a training exercise." The control room went quiet. Helena stared at the screen. After 100 years of waiting for help, all they got was a training ship full of children. "Are they serious?" Kyle whispered. Helena pressed the communication button. "New Boston, this is Commander Brooks. Be advised that this station is under active siege by hostile forces. You should leave this system immediately." The voice on the radio sounded young and confident. "Commander Brooks, we received your distress signal. We're here to help. Requesting permission to dock at Bay 7. Helena looked around the control room. Her people were staring at her with expressions of disbelief and hope. She had to make a choice. Send these children away to safety, or let them dock and probably die with the rest of them. "Permission granted," she said finally. "Dock at Bay 7. But I want to speak with your commanding officer immediately." 20 minutes later, Helena stood in the docking bay watching a small transport ship settle onto the landing pad. The ship was old but well-maintained. It had Earth military markings that Helena recognized from history books. She had never seen an actual Earth ship before. The airlock opened, and 24 young people walked out. They wore military uniforms that looked different from anything Helena had seen. The uniforms were darker and had more armor built in. The young people moved with confidence, but Helena could see they were just teenagers. Their leader stepped forward and saluted. He was tall, with short brown hair and serious eyes. "Commander Brooks, I'm Cadet Commander Jake Morrison. Thank you for allowing us to dock." Helena looked at him and felt her heart sink. This boy couldn't be older than 19. Behind him stood other young people who looked even younger. A small Asian girl who couldn't weigh more than 50 kilograms. A tall, black boy who looked like he had never been in a real fight. A blonde girl who looked like she should be in school, not on a military ship. "How old are you, son?" Helena asked. 19, ma'am. We're all final-year cadets at the Terran Military Academy." "And where exactly is this academy?" Jake looked surprised by the question. "On Earth, ma'am. Sol system, 3rd planet." Helena had heard of Earth in the old records, but she thought it was just a legend. "I need to speak with your adult commander." "Where is he?" "Ma'am, I am the commander of this unit. We don't have any adult officers with us. This is our final training mission before graduation." Helena felt like screaming. After 100 years of desperate fighting, after watching thousands of good people die after sending plea after plea for help, this is what they sent her. Children on a school trip. "Listen carefully," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "This station has been under siege for 100 years. Those ships out there have enough firepower to destroy entire planets. We have maybe a few months of supplies left. Our weapons barely work. Our shields are failing. This is not a place for cadets to play soldier." Jake listened without interrupting. When she finished, he nodded seriously. "Ma'am, we understand the situation is difficult, but we're here now and we want to help. Could you show us around the station? Maybe we can find ways to improve your defenses." Helena almost laughed. These children thought they could solve problems that her experienced officers had worked on for decades, but something in Jake's voice made her pause. He didn't sound like he was playing games, he sounded like a real soldier. "Fine," she said. "Kyle, give them the full tour. Show them everything. Maybe they'll understand what we're facing." As they walked through the station, Helena watched the young cadets carefully. They asked strange questions. The small Asian girl who introduced herself as Lisa Chang wanted to know why they hadn't tried overloading the power grid. The tall boy, Ryan Powell, studied their defensive positions and asked about alien attack patterns. A blonde girl named Amy Carter listened to their communications equipment and frowned. "You're not encrypting your transmissions," Amy said. "What's the point?" Kyle replied. "The aliens can't understand our language anyway." Amy and Jake exchanged a look that Helena didn't understand. After 2 hours, they returned to the control room. Helena sat down and looked at these young faces. They seemed more serious now that they had seen the station's condition. "Well?" she asked. "Do you understand now? This isn't a training exercise. This is real war and we're losing." Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at his team. Helena saw something pass between them like they were having a silent conversation. "Commander Brooks," Jake said finally, "we'd like to help defend this station." "Help how?" "You're children with no real weapons and no military experience. Ma'am, we may be young, but we're from Earth. We've been trained in Earth military doctrine. I think that might make a difference here." Helena had never heard of Earth military doctrine. She assumed all human military training was basically the same, but something in Jake's voice made her curious. "What makes Earth training so special?" Jake smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that made Helena think of dangerous animals. "Ma'am, Earth isn't like other human colonies. Earth is what we call a death world. Everything there tries to kill you. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the bacteria. Humans from Earth learn to fight differently than humans from safer worlds." Helena didn't understand what he meant, but she was running out of options. The Zilithian fleet was still out there, waiting. Her people were dying slowly from lack of supplies and hope. Maybe these children could at least boost morale for a few days before the end came. "All right," she said. "You can stay. But you follow my orders, and you don't do anything stupid that gets my people killed." Jake nodded. "Yes, ma'am, we won't let you down." As Helena watched the cadets settle into temporary quarters, she wondered if she had just made the biggest mistake of her career. Outside the windows, the Zilithian ships continued their patient watch, waiting for the humans to finally give up and die. The next morning, Helena found the Earth cadets in places she never expected. Lisa Chang was crawling through the maintenance tunnels under the shield generators. Ryan Powell sat in the observation deck with a stack of data pads, studying attack patterns from the past 50 years. Amy Carter had somehow gained access to the communication arrays and was listening to alien transmissions with a frown on her face. "What are you doing?" Helena asked Lisa, who was hanging upside down from a power conduit. "These shield generators are ancient," Lisa said, not bothering to climb down. "But they're built really well. The problem isn't the shields themselves. It's how you're using them." Helena felt annoyed. We've had the best engineers working on those systems for decades. I'm sure you have, Lisa said politely. But nobody tried turning them inside out. What does that mean? Lisa finally dropped, down from the conduit. Her uniform was dirty and her hands were covered in grease. Shield generators create energy barriers by pushing power outward. But if you reverse the flow and overload the system, they can push energy inward instead, like making a bomb. Helena stared at her. That would destroy the shields. Yes, but it would also destroy anything within 50 kilometers, including enemy ships. Before Helena could respond, Kyle's voice came over the intercom. Commander Brooks, please report to the observation deck. Helena found Ryan surrounded by charts and computer displays. He had mapped out every Zilithian attack from the past century. Red lines showed ship movements, blue dots showed weapon impacts, and yellow areas marked damage zones. Commander, Ryan said without looking up, your enemies are very predictable. Predictable? How? Ryan pointed to the charts. They follow the same attack patterns every time. Formation Alpha for small raids, Formation Beta for medium assaults, Formation Gamma for major attacks. They never vary the timing, never change their approach angles, never try anything creative. Helena looked at the charts. Ryan was right. The Zilithian attacks did follow clear patterns. So what? Knowing their patterns doesn't help us fight ships that outgun us 50-1. It does if you stop thinking like them, Ryan said. He pulled up a new display showing the space around. Kepler Station. They expect you to respond defensively. Shields up, weapons ready, everyone in position, but what if you responded offensively instead? With what weapons? Half our guns don't work. Ryan smiled. Commander, everything on this station is a weapon, if you use it right. Helena was starting to feel frustrated with these young people and their strange ideas. She went looking for Jake and found him in the engineering section with Ben Tucker. The two boys were studying blueprints of the station's original construction. Commander, Ben said when he saw her, did you know this station has 3 separate power grids? Of course. Main power, backup power, and emergency power. No, ma'am. It has 6 power grids, 3 more that were built into the original design, but never activated. Ben pointed to the blueprints. Look here. The builders installed redundant systems throughout the entire station. Power conduits, life support, communications, even weapon systems. Most of it was sealed off and forgotten. Helena looked at the blueprints more carefully. Ben was right. There were systems marked on the original plans that she had never heard of. Why would they build so many backup systems? Because the original builders were from Earth, Jake said quietly. Earth military doctrine assumes that everything will go wrong at the worst possible moment. So you build 3 backups for every backup. Helena was starting to understand that these Earth humans thought very differently from other humans. What does this mean for us? It means this station is much more capable than anyone realizes, Ben said. These sealed systems could give us power, weapons, and life support that the Zilithians don't know about. That afternoon, Helena found Amy in the communications center. The young woman had earphones on and was listening intently to something. She was also writing notes in a language Helena didn't recognize. What are you doing? Helena asked. Amy took off the earphones. Learning Zilithian. It's actually not that hard once you understand the basic grammar structure. Helena sat down hard. You're learning their language? In one day? I'm getting the basics. They're not encrypting their communications because they think we can't understand them. But they're wrong. Amy played back a recording. The alien voices sounded like growling mixed with clicking noises. This is their fleet commander talking to his captains. He's complaining about how boring this siege is. You can understand that, some of it. He's saying that his superiors are getting impatient. The siege has gone on too long and they want results. He's planning a major attack soon to prove that he's still in control. Helena felt a chill. When? Soon. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. But he's definitely planning something big. That evening, Helena called a meeting in the main conference room. Her senior officers sat around a table that had once held 50 people. Now there were only 8 of them left. The Earth cadets sat at the far end of the table, looking young and out of place. "Report," Helena said to her chief engineer, Commander Frank Lopez. "Shields are down to 28%, Frank said. "Main weapons are offline for repairs. We've got maybe 4 hours of fighting power left in the backup systems." "Medical?" Helena asked. 17 people in the hospital," said Dr. Patricia Wong. "Mostly malnutrition and stress-related illnesses. We're out of most medications." "Food. Supplies? 6 months if we cut rations again," reported Supply Officer Carlos Martinez. "But people are already hungry. Cut rations anymore and we'll have riots." Helena looked around the table at the tired faces of her officers. These were good people who had fought bravely for 100 years. But they were beaten, and everyone knew it. "Recommendations?" she asked. The table was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Frank spoke up. "Commander, maybe it's time to consider surrender. We've fought as long as we could. No one could ask for more." Several officers nodded. Helena felt her heart break a little. She had been thinking the same thing, but hearing it said out loud made it real. "Commander Brooks," Jake said from the end of the table, "may we make a suggestion?" Helena almost said no. These children didn't understand their situation, but something made her pause. "Go ahead." Jake stood up. "We've been studying this station and the enemy fleet. We think there might be another option." "Such as?" "Fight back?" Frank laughed bitterly. "Son, we've been fighting back for 100 years. It doesn't work." "No, sir," Jake said respectfully. "You've been defending for 100 years. There's a difference." Helena frowned. "Explain." Jake looked at his team. Lisa nodded and stood up. "The shield generators can be weaponized. It will destroy the shields, but it will also create an explosive blast that could damage enemy ships." Ryan stood up next. "The enemy follows predictable patterns. If we know where they'll be, we can hit them before they're ready." Ben joined them. "The station has hidden systems that could give us more power and weapons than the enemy expects." Amy was the last to stand. "The enemy is getting impatient. Their commander is under pressure. If we hit them hard and fast, they might break and run instead of fighting." Helena stared at these 4 young people. "You're talking about turning this entire station into a weapon?" "Yes, ma'am," Jake said. "Earth military doctrine teaches that the best defense is a good offense. But more than that, it teaches that desperate situations call for desperate measures." "This is insane," Frank said. "You're talking about suicide." "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But right now you're planning to surrender. At least our way, you go down fighting." Helena looked around the table at her officers. They were staring at the cadets with expressions of shock and disbelief. But she also saw something else in their eyes. Hope. "What would you need?" she asked. "Full access to all station systems," Jake said. "Permission to make modifications, and trust that we know what we're doing." "You're children," Frank protested. "You've never been in real combat." Jake's expression hardened. "Sir, we're from Earth. We've been in combat since the day we were born. Our whole planet is combat." Helena studied Jake's face. There was something in his eyes that reminded her of veteran soldiers she had known. Something old and hard that didn't belong in someone so young. "If we do this," she said slowly, "and it doesn't work, we all die." "Commander," Jake said quietly, "you're all dying anyway. This just gives you a chance to take some of them with you." Helena looked around the table one more time. Her officers were waiting for her decision. Outside, the Zilithian fleet continued its patient watch, confident that time was on their side. "All right," she said finally. "You have 24 hours to set up whatever you're planning. But if I think you're going to get my people killed for nothing, I'll stop you." Jake nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for giving us a chance." As the meeting broke up, Helena wondered if she had just signed all their death warrants. But as she watched the Earth cadets file out of the room, she noticed something. For the first time in years, her officers were talking excitedly instead of just looking defeated. Maybe these crazy children from Earth actually had a plan. Or maybe they were all about to die in the most spectacular way possible. Either way, Helena thought it beat dying slowly from starvation and despair. Helena woke up to red lights flashing in her quarters. The emergency alarm was screaming through the station speakers. She grabbed her uniform and ran to the control room, expecting to find chaos. Instead, she found her officers staring at their screens in confusion. "Report!" she shouted over the alarm. 12 Zilithian attack cruisers are moving toward us, Kyle said. Full battle formation. This is the biggest attack they've launched in 20 years. Helena looked at the main screen. The alien ships were moving in perfect formation, just like Ryan had predicted. Their weapons were charging and their shields were at maximum power. Behind them, the massive command ship of Overlord Vextar waited and watched. "Where are the cadets?" Helena asked. "Scattered all over the station," Kyle replied. "Jake is in engineering, Lisa is in the power plant, Ryan is in the weapons control room, and Amy is in communications. Ben is somewhere in the maintenance tunnels." Helena felt her stomach drop. The children were going to get themselves killed in the first few minutes of battle. "Get them back here now." "Commander," came Jake's voice over the intercom. "Please don't recall my team. We're exactly where we need to be." "This is not a drill," Helena shouted into her microphone. "Those are real enemy ships with real weapons. You need to get to safety." "Ma'am, with respect, there is no safety on this station. But we have a plan. Please trust us." Before Helena could respond, Lisa's voice crackled over the communication system. "Beginning power redistribution in 3, 2, 1. Every light on the station went out. Emergency power kicked in a few seconds later, bathing everything in red light. But something was wrong. The lights were flickering in patterns that made no sense. Some sections of the station went completely dark while others blazed with too much light. "What is she doing?" Frank Lopez yelled from his engineering station. "She's overloading the power grid," Kyle said, reading his instruments with disbelief. "She's routing power through systems that weren't designed to handle it." Helena watched her screens as electrical storms began racing through the station's corridors. Sparks flew from wall panels. Computer systems shut down and restarted randomly. The artificial gravity fluctuated, making everyone feel sick. "She's going to kill us all," Frank said. "No." Jake's voice came over the intercom, calm as if he was discussing the weather. "She's creating an electromagnetic pulse field around the station. The aliens won't be able to target us properly." Helena looked at her tactical display. The Zilithian ships were indeed having trouble. Their targeting systems kept losing lock on the station. But that was the least of Helena's worries. "Ryan, what are you doing to my weapons?" she demanded as the station's defense turrets began firing in seemingly random directions. "I'm not firing at the enemy ships, ma'am," Ryan replied through the static. "I'm firing at empty space." "That makes no sense." "It will in about 30 seconds. Helena watched in horror as their limited ammunition was wasted on shots that hit nothing. The Zilithian ships continued their approach, confident that the humans had lost their minds. Then Amy's voice filled every speaker on the station. But she wasn't speaking in English. She was speaking in the growling, clicking language of the Zilithians. Her voice was amplified and broadcast on all frequencies. "What is she saying?" Helena asked. Kyle, who had been learning some alien languages, listened carefully. His face went pale. "She's telling them that we have a plague on board, that everyone is dying from a horrible disease that drives people insane before it kills them. That's not true. The aliens don't know that. She's describing symptoms that match what they're seeing. The crazy power fluctuations, the random weapons, fire, the electromagnetic interference. To them it looks like we really have gone insane." Helena looked at the tactical screen. The Zilithian ships had slowed their approach. They were talking to each other on their communication channels, discussing what they were seeing. That was when Ben's modifications kicked in. The station shuddered as entire sections began venting atmosphere into space. Helena watched in terror as the environmental controls went haywire. Pressure alarms screamed throughout the station. "He's going to kill us all," Frank screamed. But Helena noticed something strange. The atmosphere was being vented in specific patterns. Ben wasn't just releasing air randomly. He was creating pressure differentials that pushed and pulled at the station's structure in calculated ways. "Jake, explain what's happening before I have you all arrested," Helena said. "Ben is turning the station into a variable mass object," Jake replied. "By changing our internal pressure and mass distribution, he's making us unpredictable. The aliens can't calculate our exact position or momentum." Helena looked at her navigation display. Jake was right. The station was moving in tiny, erratic patterns, not enough to be dangerous but enough to make targeting difficult. "And the random weapons fire?" she asked. "Ryan isn't firing randomly," Jake said. "He's creating a debris field. In about 10 seconds, all those projectiles will start hitting things." Helena looked at her long-range sensors. Ryan's seemingly wasted shots were indeed about to impact something, but not the enemy ships. They were hitting asteroids and space debris that had been floating harmlessly around the station. The impacts sent chunks of rock and metal flying in all directions. What had been empty space suddenly became filled with high-speed projectiles, moving in unpredictable patterns. "He's created a minefield," Kyle said with amazement. "A minefield that moves and changes." The Zilithian ships found themselves flying through a cloud of debris that their computers couldn't track or predict. Their shields deflected most of the impacts, but the constant bombardment was draining their power and confusing their sensors. Helena watched the battle unfold with a mixture of terror and fascination. The cadets had turned every system on the station into a weapon, but not in any way that made conventional sense. They weren't trying to destroy the enemy ships directly. They were trying to make the enemy destroy themselves. "Overlord Vextar is hailing us," Amy reported. "Put him on screen," Helena ordered. The alien commander appeared on the main display. He was tall and covered in gray scales, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed red with anger. When he spoke, his voice was deep and threatening. "Human commander." The translation system interpreted his words. "What madness is this? Why do your people act like diseased animals?" Helena looked at Jake's image on a side screen. The young man nodded encouragingly. "Overlord," Helena said, trying to sound as crazy as possible. "We welcome death. We embrace the void. Your weapons cannot hurt those who no longer fear destruction." The alien commander's expression changed from anger to confusion to something that might have been fear. "You are ill," Vextar said. "Your minds are broken." "Yes," Helena replied, getting into the act. "We are broken. We are mad. We are unpredictable. And we are coming for you." That was Jake's signal. Every system that Lisa had overloaded suddenly discharged at once. The station's shields collapsed, but as they failed, they released all their stored energy in a massive electromagnetic pulse that washed over the Zilithian fleet. The alien ship's electronic systems flickered and failed. Their weapons went offline. Their shields collapsed. For a few precious seconds, the mighty Zilithian war fleet was defenseless. Ryan had been waiting for this moment. The station's hidden weapons systems, powered by Ben's jury-rigged power grid, came online all at once. Guns that the aliens didn't know existed opened fire from angles they hadn't expected. But the cadets still weren't trying to destroy the enemy ships. They were targeting specific systems: communication arrays, sensor clusters, maneuvering thrusters. They were trying to blind and cripple the fleet, not destroy it. "Why aren't you going for kill shots?" Helena asked. "Because we want them to run away," Jake replied. "Dead enemies can't spread stories about how dangerous humans are. Live enemies who escape can tell others to stay away." Helena began to understand the deeper strategy. The cadets weren't just trying to win this battle. They were trying to end the war by making humanity too frightening to fight. The Zilithian ships were in chaos. Half their systems were down. They couldn't communicate with each other properly. And they were still taking fire from weapons they couldn't locate. The debris field that Ryan had created was still bombarding them with unpredictable impacts. Most importantly, they had no idea what the humans were going to do next. Overlord Vextar appeared on screen again. This time, he looked genuinely frightened. "What "Do you want?" he demanded. Helena looked at Jake, who was grinning like a wolf. "We want you to leave," Helena said simply. "Leave now and never come back. Tell your superiors that humanity is not worth the cost of conquest. You cannot defeat our entire fleet with one dying station." "We're not trying to defeat your fleet," Helena replied. "We're trying to make you understand that fighting us will cost more than you're willing to pay." The alien commander was quiet for a long moment. Helena could see him looking at displays that showed the damage to his ships, the chaos in his formation, and the unpredictable behavior of the human station. "This is not over," Vextar finally said. "Yes, it is," Helena replied with growing confidence. "You just don't know it yet." The transmission ended. Helena watched the tactical display as the Zilithian ships tried to regroup, but they were having trouble. Jake's voice came over the intercom, calm and steady despite the chaos around them. "Commander Brooks, I need you to order all non-essential personnel to evacuate immediately." Helena stared at the main screen where the Zilithian fleet was trying to regroup. "Evacuate to where? We're surrounded. The civilian transport ships in Bay 3 through Bay 7. Ben has been preparing them for emergency launch." "Those ships can barely make it to the nearest system," Kyle protested. "They'll be sitting ducks." "Not if the Zilithians are too busy to chase them," Jake replied. "Commander, please trust me. Get your people off this station now." Helena looked around the control room at her officers. These people had been her family for decades. The thought of sending them away while she stayed behind felt wrong. "I'm not abandoning my post," she said firmly. "You're not abandoning anything," Jake said. "You're saving lives. The people who evacuate will be able to tell others what happened. Here, they'll carry the story of how Kepler Station fought back." Before Helena could respond, Ben's voice crackled through the speakers. "Structural modifications complete. Station is ready for final phase." "What structural modifications?" Frank demanded. Helena felt the station shake under her feet. But this wasn't the random shaking from before. This was something else. Something purposeful. "He's been weakening specific support beams throughout the station," Jake explained. "When Lisa overloads the remaining power systems, the station will break apart in a controlled manner." "You're going to destroy the station?" Helena asked in shock. "We're going to turn it into the galaxy's largest shotgun," Jake replied. Helena finally understood what the cadets had been planning all along. They weren't trying to save Kepler Station. They were turning it into a weapon that would only work once. "All hands, this is Commander Brooks," she announced over the station-wide intercom. "All non-essential personnel report to evacuation ships immediately. This is not a drill." As people began running through the corridors toward the transport bays, Helena stayed in the control room with her senior officers and the Earth cadets. She wasn't going to abandon these children, no matter how crazy their plan was. "Ryan, target analysis complete," came Amy's voice from the communication station. "Overlord Vextar's command ship is exactly where you predicted it would be." "Perfect," Ryan replied. "Lisa, begin final power sequence." The lights throughout the station began pulsing in a steady rhythm. Helena could feel energy building up in the walls around them. Every power conduit, every backup system, every hidden circuit that Ben had discovered was channeling electricity toward the shield generators. "How much power are you pumping into those systems?" Frank asked nervously. "All of it," Lisa replied cheerfully. "Every watt of power on this station is going into the shield generators. They're going to explode in about 3 minutes. Helena grabbed her communication device. "Jake, this is insane. The explosion will kill everyone on the station." "Not everyone," Jake replied. "The control room is in the most heavily shielded part of the station. We'll survive the initial blast." "What about your team? They're scattered all over the station." "We'll be fine, Commander. We've done this kind of thing before." Helena wanted to ask what he meant by that, but there wasn't time. The evacuation ships were launching from the docking bays. She watched on her screens as the small civilian vessels accelerated away from the station as fast as their old engines could manage. The Zilithian fleet tried to intercept some of the evacuation ships, but the debris field that Ryan had created was still causing problems. The alien ships couldn't maneuver properly with chunks of rock and metal constantly hitting their hulls. 2 minutes to detonation, Lisa announced. Helena looked at the tactical display. The Zilithian command ship was indeed exactly where Ryan had predicted. Overlord Vextar had positioned his massive vessel behind his attack fleet, thinking he was safe from the dying human station. Ben, are you ready? Jake asked. Structural charges are in place, Ben replied. When the shield generators blow, the station will fragment into 847 pieces. Each piece will be traveling at a different velocity and trajectory. 847 pieces? Helena repeated. How do you know the exact number? I calculated it, Ben said simply. Each piece is designed to hit a specific target. The biggest chunks will hit the command ship. The smaller pieces will hit the escort vessels. Helena realized that Ben hadn't just been weakening the station randomly. He had been turning the entire structure into a precisely aimed weapon. Every corridor, every room, every piece of hull plating had been calculated to hit the enemy fleet at exactly the right angle and speed. 1 minute to detonation, Lisa announced. All cadets, final positions, Jake ordered. Helena watched her, screens as the young people moved through the station with calm efficiency. They weren't running or panicking. They moved like they had done this 100 times before. Jake appeared in the control room, carrying a weapon Helena had never seen before. It looked like a rifle, but heavier and more complex. What's that? She asked. Boarding gear, Jake replied. After the station breaks apart, we're going to board the command ship. Board the command ship? Helena stared at him. That's suicide. Maybe, Jake admitted. But if we can capture or kill Overlord Vextar, the rest of the fleet will retreat. Zilithian military doctrine requires them to withdraw if they lose their commanding officer. How do you know that? Amy learned it from intercepting their communications. Zilithian society is very hierarchical. Without clear leadership, they become confused and cautious. 30 seconds, Lisa announced. Helena felt the station shaking more violently now. The power buildup was becoming dangerous. She could smell burning circuits and overheating metal. Jake, she said quietly, if this doesn't work, I want you to know that it's been an honor fighting beside you. Jake smiled. Commander, this is going to work. We're from Earth. We don't know how to lose. 10 seconds, Lisa called out. Helena gripped her chair and closed her eyes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The universe exploded. Helena felt like she was being squeezed by a giant hand. The lights went out completely. Every computer screen went black. The artificial gravity failed, making her float in her chair. The sound was beyond description, like thunder and screaming metal and the roar of a dying star. When the noise stopped, Helena opened her eyes. Emergency power was flickering back on. The main screen was cracked but still working. She looked at the tactical display and gasped. Where Kepler Station had been, there was now an expanding cloud of debris moving in all directions. But this wasn't random destruction. The pieces were moving in perfect formation, like a giant three-dimensional arrow aimed at the Zilithian fleet. The largest chunks of the station were indeed heading straight for Overlord Vextar's command ship. The alien vessel was trying to maneuver away, but it was too big and too slow. Helena watched as piece after piece of her former home slammed into the enemy ship. The smaller pieces hit the escort vessels with devastating effect. The Zilithian ship's shields were designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, not chunks of metal the size of buildings moving at incredible speeds. Direct hit on the command ship, Kyle reported, his voice filled with amazement. Multiple hull breaches, they're losing atmosphere. The escort ships are breaking formation, Frank added. Half of them are disabled or destroyed. Helena looked around the control room. Somehow they had survived. The room was damaged and most of the equipment was offline, but they were alive. Where are the cadets? She asked. I'm tracking their signals, Kyle said. They're inside the debris field, moving toward the command ship. Helena switched to external cameras and saw something impossible. The 4 Earth cadets were somehow flying through space without ships, using some kind of personal propulsion systems. They were surfing through the debris field like it was a playground. How are they doing that? Frank asked. Personal maneuvering units, Jake's voice came through the damaged communication system. Standard Earth military equipment for boarding actions. Helena watched as the cadets reached the damaged command ship and disappeared inside through one of the hull breaches. A few minutes later, explosions began erupting throughout the alien vessel. "What are you doing in there?" Helena asked. "Hunting," Jake replied. The explosions continued for several more minutes. Then suddenly the command ship's engines went dark. Its weapons stopped firing. Its communication arrays went silent. "Command ship is dead in space," Kyle reported. "No power, no communications, no life signs." Helena looked at the remaining Zilithian ships. They were floating motionless, apparently unsure what to do without orders from their commander. "Jake, what's your status?" she called. "Mission accomplished," Jake replied. "Overlord Vextar is no longer in command of anything." "Are you all alive?" "We're fine, Commander. A little banged up, but fine." Helena slumped back in her chair. 20 minutes ago, they had been facing certain death. Now, the Zilithian fleet was in ruins, and their commander was gone. The remaining enemy ships are requesting permission to retrieve survivors and withdraw, Amy reported. Helena looked at the tactical display. Out of 12 attack cruisers and 1 massive command ship, only 4 alien vessels were still capable of fighting. The rest were either destroyed or too damaged to be threats. Helena floated in the damaged control room, watching the last Zilithian ships disappear into hyperspace. The enemy fleet that had surrounded Kepler Station for 100 years was gone. After a century of siege, the war had ended in 20 minutes. "Commander," Kyle said from his station, "we're getting emergency signals from the cadets. They need medical attention." Helena grabbed the communication device. "Jake, what's your condition?" "We're alive, but banged up." Jake's voice came through the static. "Lisa has radiation poisoning from the power overloads. Ben broke his arm during the boarding action. Amy and I are just bruised and tired. Can you get back to us? We're using one of the Zilithian escape pods. Should reach you in about 10 minutes. Helena looked around the ruined control room. Half the equipment was destroyed, the lights were flickering, and there was a crack in the main window that showed space beyond. But they were alive and the enemy was gone. "Kyle, send a message to the evacuation ships. Tell them it's safe to return." "Already done, Commander. The first transport should dock in 30 minutes. Helena felt exhausted suddenly. The stress and fear of the battle was catching up with her. She had been prepared to die defending her station. Instead, 4 teenagers had saved them all. "Frank, damage report," she called to her chief engineer. "Station structure is completely destroyed," Frank replied, reading from a damaged tablet. "Life support is running on emergency power. We have maybe 6 hours of air left. But Commander, the docking bays are still intact. We can evacuate everyone safely." Helena nodded. Kepler Station was dead, but her people would live. That was more than she had dared hope for just a few hours ago. The Zilithian escape pod docked 20 minutes later. Helena was waiting in the medical bay when they brought the cadets in. Dr. Wong immediately began treating Lisa's radiation exposure while Ben got his broken arm set in a cast. Jake sat on a medical bed, his uniform torn and his face bruised. Amy sat next to him, holding an ice pack to her head. They looked like children who had been in a playground fight, not soldiers who had just won an impossible war. "How do you feel?" Helena asked Jake. "Tired," he admitted. "But good. We accomplished our mission." "Your mission was to end the siege?" Jake shook his head. "Our mission was to learn how real combat works. The siege was just the problem we had to solve." Helena stared at him. "This was a training exercise for you?" "Everything is training when you're from Earth," Amy said quietly. "Our whole planet is one big survival course. We learn to fight before we learn to walk." Dr. Wong finished treating Lisa and walked over to Helena. "The radiation exposure isn't fatal, but she needs real medical treatment. More than I can provide here." "The evacuation ships have medical facilities," Helena said. "We'll get her the help she needs." Over the next few hours, the transport ships returned and began evacuating the remaining station personnel. Helena stood in the main docking bay, watching her people leave their home for the last time. Kepler Station had been their world for generations. Now it was just floating debris. "Commander Brooks," Jake said, walking up beside her. "I wanted to thank you for trusting us." "I should be thanking you," Helena replied. "You saved all our lives." "We just did what we were trained to do." Helena looked at the young man. He still seemed so young, but there was something in his eyes that reminded her of soldiers who had seen too much combat. "Jake, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How many times have you done something like this before?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "This was our first real space battle. But we've been in combat situations since we were children. Earth is not a safe place." "What kind of combat situations?" "Survival training in the Australian wilderness, fighting giant spiders in the Amazon, escaping avalanches in the Himalayas, surviving storms in the Pacific Ocean." Jake shrugged. "On Earth, nature tries to kill you every day. After a while, you learn to fight back." Helena began to understand why these children had been so confident. They hadn't been afraid of the Zilithian fleet because they had been fighting for survival their entire lives. "The other human colonies aren't like Earth?" she asked. "No, ma'am. Most human colonies are, on safe, peaceful worlds, good weather, friendly animals, no natural disasters. The people there live comfortable lives. But not on Earth. Earth is what we call a death world. Everything there evolved to be as dangerous as possible. The humans who stayed on Earth had to evolve to be just as dangerous or they would have died out." Helena thought about this. "So when you came here and saw our situation, it didn't seem impossible to you?" "No, ma'am. It just seemed like another day on Earth." 3 days later, Helena stood on the bridge of the transport ship New Boston. The cadets had offered to take the Kepler Station survivors to the nearest human colony. Through the windows, she could see the debris field that had once been her home. "Any regrets?" Jake asked, joining her at the window. "No," Helena said after a moment. "Kepler Station served its purpose. It protected the people of New Geneva for 100 years. That's what it was built to do. And now the galaxy knows that humans don't give up, even when the situation seems hopeless." Jake nodded. That was the real victory. Not destroying the Zilithian fleet, but showing them what happens when you corner a Deathworlder. Over the following weeks, word of the Battle of Kepler Station spread throughout human space. The story grew with each telling. 4 cadets from Earth had defeated an alien fleet that had seemed unbeatable. Military academies across the galaxy began requesting information about Earth military doctrine. Helena found herself giving lectures at the Colonial Defense Academy about the battle. She always made sure to emphasize that the real heroes were the 4 young people from Earth who had refused to accept defeat. "What made them different?" a young officer asked during one of her lectures. "They were from a world that taught them to see impossible odds as just another challenge," Helena replied. "When everyone else saw certain death, they saw an opportunity." 6 months after the battle, Helena received a message from Jake. He had graduated from the Terran Military Academy and been assigned to a new unit called the Deathworld Division. His team was being sent to help human colonies that faced impossible military situations. "We're teaching other humans how to fight like Earthers," Jake wrote. "The galaxy is a dangerous place and humanity needs to be ready for anything." Helena smiled as she read the message. The young man who had saved her station was now teaching others to be just as dangerous and unpredictable. A year later, Helena attended a ceremony on New Geneva where a memorial was being built. The memorial honored all the people who had died during the 100-year siege of Kepler Station, but it also celebrated the victory that had ended the war. The inscription on the memorial read, "They held the line until Earth's children could break it." During the ceremony, Helena met other survivors of alien attacks on human colonies. All of them had similar stories. When their situation seemed hopeless, teams of Earth-trained soldiers had appeared and accomplished the impossible. "It's like they don't understand the concept of giving up," one survivor told Helena. "They see a problem and they solve it no matter how dangerous or crazy the solution might be." Helena nodded. She was beginning to understand that the Battle of Kepler Station had been just the beginning. Humanity was learning to fight like Deathworlders, and the galaxy would never be the same. After the ceremony, Helena walked through the memorial garden. She stopped at a plaque that showed the names of the 4 cadets who had ended the siege: Jake Morrison, Lisa Chang, Ryan Powell, Amy Carter, and Ben Tucker. Young people who had changed the course of human history in 20 minutes. At the bottom of the plaque was a quote from Jake. "We don't win because we're stronger or smarter. We win because we refuse to lose." Helena thought about those words as she watched ships coming and going from New Geneva's spaceport. Some of those ships carried Zilithian diplomats who had come to negotiate trade agreements instead of demanding surrender. Others carried alien scientists who wanted to study human psychology and tactics. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity, not because humans were the strongest species, but because they were the most dangerous when cornered. And everyone knew that Earth produced the most dangerous humans of all. As Helena walked back to her new home, she smiled. The 100-year siege had ended with humanity's victory, but more than that, it had announced to the galaxy that Deathworlders were not to be underestimated. In military academies across known space, alien officers studied the Battle of Kepler Station as an example of what happened when you gave humans no choice but to fight. The lesson was always the same: never corner a Deathworlder unless you're prepared for them to do something impossible. Helena's final thought as she reached her door was simple. Jake and his team had saved more than just Kepler Station. They had saved humanity's future by showing the galaxy what Earth's children were capable of when they had nothing left to lose.